Hello. As I mentioned in the last session, I'm recording these one after the other and a little bit early as when they come out, I'm actually on holiday. Now, if you haven't listened to the previous session, I think it's really important you do because these two fit together. And the focus is on storytelling and the importance of storytelling. And so here, I'm just following through the story of Paul and just helping us to see a little bit more and focus on who Paul is, what's making him tick, and the courage and determination Paul has often against all odds when his life is threatened. He's beaten, he's threatened with being beaten, he's threatened with being flogged, he's been pulled about and almost ripped apart by the crowds. It's quite something. But I think if we can grasp a bit more about who he is, it helps us when we read more of his, if you like, his theology, his understanding of who God is. So please listen to the previous one if you haven't, and that will give you the full picture. I finished off last time in Acts 23, verse 11, where Paul had just been told that he had to go on, that he'd be going to Rome, that he'd testify in Rome. I was just thinking about that the fact that he'd been told that, there he is, in one way, facing real threats, strong threats on his life and the possibility that he might get killed. But now he's got another word from God in the middle of it all, that you will stand in Rome, you will testify in Rome. So I'm sure at that moment that must have given him some confidence that in the middle of everything, he's told to take courage, but in the middle of everything that he's going to come through this to the next stage. Yeah, with all that goes on for him, I'm not sure I want the next stage, but there you go. Um, so what happens next? So we find out next that some Jews conspired together and decided they weren't going to eat and drink until they'd killed Paul. Now, I think at this point, Paul would have a different type of confidence. There must have been nervousness and anxiety. Well, any normal human being would, but he has a confidence he's going to Rome. But there's about 40 people that have set up this plot, and they tell the chief priests and the elders, and they basically focus on the Sanhedrin making a petition that they want to bring him along to get some more accurate information. And then we find that the son of Paul's sister hears about this plot, and he goes and tells Paul. So there's rumors going round and stories going round, but amazingly, the right person is in the right place to tell Paul what's going on. You think, well, without God intervention, what's the probability of that happening? Quite small. And so Paul is able to take action, and he asks for this lad, this son, to be taken to the commander. He goes to the commander, and he says to the centurion says, Paul the prisoner has sent me and asked me to bring this young man to you because he has something to tell you. The commander took the young man by the hand, drew him aside, and asked, what is it that you want to tell me? And he said, some Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul before the Sanhedrin tomorrow on the pretext of wanting to get more accurate information about him. Don't give in, because there are more than 40 of them waiting to ambush him, in ambush for him. They've taken an oath not to eat or drink until they killed him. They are now ready, waiting for your consent to their request. I look at that going, 40 on one man? They must have had, I don't know, it's outrageous, isn't it? One or two would have probably been enough in the natural, but there must have been an element there like, we're going to have to do this properly because somehow he always gets away. They weren't in a stage or a place where they were going to acknowledge God in it, but their actions say they're a bit concerned it might not work. And definitely having taken an oath not to eat and drink. when you're fighting against God, that could be an awful long time, couldn't it? And it says the commander dismissed the young man and says, "Don't tell anyone that you've reported this." And so again, the commander is not going to allow for any problems because he gets two of his centurions and says, "Get ready a detachment of 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen to go to Caesarea at 9 tonight and provide horses for Paul that he might be taken safely to the governor Felix. You're like, this is all about one man. Yeah, you look at it, it's ramping up. You got 40 people that want to kill him, and now to get him to a place of safety, 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, 200 spearmen. That's 470 people. It's just all for one man. Yeah, you have to say that's quite extraordinary. And he writes a letter to the governor Felix um, and why he sent him and what's going on, and saying that there's no charge and that there's a plot against him. So yeah, he says all those things, and Paul was taken that night, um, and it says that some of them didn't go all the way, but the cavalry um, went on with him. So that's still 70, and they returned to the barracks, and they took him to Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor and handed Paul over. And yeah, he said basically he's going to wait for the others to catch up and hear what the charges are against him. So again, at that moment, Paul must have looked at that. Yeah, it must have made him smile when he was surrounded by 470 people, knowing that God, in his grace, had set a course for him, a path for him, and yet he had the courage, day by day, to walk it through, walk it out. And we're told that 5 days later, High Priest Ananias went to Caesarea with some elders and a lawyer, and they brought their charges against Paul before the governor. Again, Paul was brought in, and the case was presented against Paul. And it's interesting how the case, all the lawyers speak, we've enjoyed a period of peace under you, and your foresight has brought about reforms to this nation. So they were buttering up Felix, weren't they? Everywhere and in every way, most excellent Felix. We acknowledge this with profound gratitude. Now, we want to get to the point. I would request that you be kind enough to hear us briefly. Well, he's waffling, isn't he? Now he's going to be brief. We found this man to be a troublemaker, so you can see how they view Paul, stirring up riots among the Jews all over the world. He is the ringleader of a Nazarene sect, and he even tried to desecrate the temple, so we seized him. Well, he didn't do that, did he? Examine him for yourself. You will be able to learn the truth about all these charges we're bringing against him. The other Jews joined in the accusation, asserting these things were true. So Paul was given his opportunity to reply. And again, Paul starts with all the, I don't know what you call it, the flannel really. So, you've been judged for many years. I'm glad to make my defense. And you can, easily verify. So Paul's now putting his case. 12 days ago. So let's stop for a minute. All this that we've seen in the last few passages is 12 days of persecution, and 5 of those he's been waiting, for this trial. So actually, Paul faced all those threats to his life, everything that was going on in a period of 7 days. And he said, my accusers didn't find me arguing, didn't find me stirring up the crowd in the synagogue or anywhere. And they can't prove the charges they're bringing. However, so Paul's never one to miss the opportunity to make his declaration. He says, I admit I worship the God of our ancestors as a follower of the way, which they call a sect. I believe everything that's in accordance with the law and that's written in the prophets. And I have the same hope in God as these men themselves had, that there will be a resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. So I strive always to keep my conscience clear before God and man. So again, there's a great little statement for us to think about, keeping our conscience clear, keeping our hearts clear before God, but also before men. He said he came up to Jerusalem to bring his gifts for the poor, present offerings. He said they found me ceremonially clean. done all that. No crowd, no disturbance. And he says then these guys come and basically bring the charges against um, against him. He said, "This is the one thing that I shouted in their presence that I'm charged with. It's concerning the resurrection of the dead that I'm on trial to you." So that's Paul laying out his case. It says that Felix is well acquainted with the way, with what's going on, and and Paul is kept under guard. He says, but he's given some freedom for his friends to take care of him. It's interesting. He said basically Felix would send for Paul and listen to him as he spoke about faith, but it caused fear in Felix's heart. And he said, I'll send for you again. And it says underneath, though he's listening, he's hoping that Paul will bribe him. So actually, he sent him frequently to hear the gospel. And this, believe it or not, went on for 2 years. So again, Paul's in prison. He has some freedom. Paul's been beaten, falsely charged. Yet, it doesn't change his core faith, his core pursuit of God, his core acknowledgement of who Jesus is and what Jesus did for us. There's a wonderful challenge. I know I've been slightly longer, but I wanted to get to the end of Acts 24. We'll pick up on the next one next time. Bless you. Have a wonderful week, and go and tell your story somewhere and hear other people's stories. It'll help you connect. Bye for now.